Have you ever gotten to the end of the day and felt like you didn't get enough done? You might have even mentioned it to your spouse over dinner like, oh man, I was so unproductive today. Well, today we are going to talk about productivity and why being productive doesn't mean what you might think it does. Let's start by defining what productivity technically means. For the sake of today's video, we're talking about individual productivity. And the more straightforward definitions I could find were how much work is accomplished over a particular period of time, and it refers to how consistently and efficiently an individual completes tasks or accomplishes goals. There are qualitative and quantitative measures at work here, both how much you get done and how well you get it done. It's about finding this perfect harmony of efficiency where you're doing everything to 100% of perfection and doing it in the least amount of time required so that you can then do more. And so it is no wonder that so many of us have become obsessed with becoming more productive. We all have a lot we want to do and a lot we need to do and only 24 hours in a day to do it. I look at the modern woman, as I know that's the majority of who's watching this channel, and most of us have homes and kids and careers, and we're trying to excel in all of them. We are trying to do all of them well in the least amount of time possible. So it's no surprise that we're looking for some productivity solution that's going to be our golden ticket to being like one of those Instagram moms who look like they have it all together. And listen, personally, I love efficiency. I also love hard work. My Instagram bio literally says sharing realistic organization, productivity, and honest motherhood. So while it may seem like this video is starting to become some sort of anti-productivity rant right off the bat, I can assure you that it is not. It is simply that I just want to reframe how you look at productivity. Because not only do I think deciding to be anti-productivity is unreasonable, as a business owner, a homeowner, and a mom of 3 small children, I simply can't just turn off my to-do list. But I also don't think that it's a solution. I think part of the reason we have become obsessed with productivity is because being productive feels good. It just does. I've shared this before, but this is the concept of pleasure versus gratification. Pleasure is typically instant delights. These are things like eating a sundae, going shopping, eating out, watching television. These things are usually fairly easy to obtain, but the happiness that is derived from them typically ends as soon as the event does. For example, the happiness of eating a sundae is mostly gone once the sundae is gone. Gratification, on the other hand, is harder to get. It typically requires some work. It's things like harvesting vegetables from your own garden, reaching the summit of a hike, or hitting a goal that you've been working on for a while. The gratifying part of gratification is the process. It is the hard work. And the happiness derived from these events is usually more long-lasting, and it sticks with a person long after completion. Now, very often we will turn to pleasure because it is easier to come by. It's certainly a lot easier to go out and buy a Reese's Peanut Butter Cup pumpkin, my personal pleasure of choice, than complete a workout or sit down and finish a really hard task. And there is room and need in our life for both pleasure and gratification, but you'll never get gratification without some productivity. So at this point of the video, you might be like, okay, Kallie, I'm following, but can you just like get to the point? What the heck is this magic number of like the right amount of productivity so I feel gratified, but also like the right amount of pleasure so I don't feel overworked? Ah, therein lies the problem, doesn't it? We're all told to work hard, but also make time for self-care. Find a fulfilling career that matters to you, right? Do the job you love and you'll never work a day in your life, but also be a present mother because it'll be over before you blink. We're meant to follow our dreams and not take no for an answer, but also relax, gosh darn it. Don't you know that working all the time is going to leave you stressed out and at risk of a slew of health complications? I don't think that ever before in life have we been told so many contradicting things all at once. You'll get about the same amount of Google search responses for benefits of hard work as you will for benefits of relaxation. And so we're all pretty much just left totally straddled between these two versions of ourselves. So no wonder at the end of the day we turn to our spouse and we're like, man, I was really unproductive today. So let me see if I can reframe it for you. Let me teach you a little shift that I think really helps me to be and feel productive so I can do the things that give me a feeling of success and gratification, but also don't require me to run at 100% efficiency all day long. But first, a quick break to tell you about the sponsor for today's video. The sponsor for today's video is BetterHelp, which is the world's largest therapy service that's 100% online. And I love that because we're talking about productivity in today's video, and And like, none of us really need another thing to add to our calendar, right? But when it comes to our mental health, we need to make the time. So I love that BetterHelp allows you to do everything right from the comfort of your home on your schedule. To get started with BetterHelp, you just have to ask a few questions. You can do it online or through the app, and they will match you with the right therapist from their network of over 30,000 licensed therapists. Then you can talk to that therapist however works for you, whether it's text, chat, or phone call, or even a video call. And if for some reason that therapist isn't the right fit for you, they'll pair you with someone else, and you don't have to be the one worrying about jumping through hoops of insurance and who's covered by what. To try it for yourself, get 10% off your first month by visiting betterhelp.com/butfirstcoffee. That's better HELP, and I'll also add a link in the description box down below for how you can get that 10% off your first month. Okay, so now back to my solution on the productivity power struggle. What's the answer to getting things done without attempting to run at an unreasonable 100% efficiency all day? And the answer is discipline. Unlike productivity, discipline doesn't mean you're running at 100% all day, but it does mean that you are able to complete the tasks you assigned for yourself that day. Productive is defined as completing a significant amount of work in a set amount of time, but discipline is defined as training oneself to do something in a controlled and habitual way. Discipline isn't necessarily about doing the most, but about working towards a goal without wavering, with persistence. Personally, if I had to pinpoint the number one thing that has shaped my life and changed my life for the better, the thing that has changed me from somebody who is constantly battling a feeling of overwhelm into somebody who has a feeling of control, it is developing my self-discipline. It's not that I'm doing more necessarily, that I'm checking more off my to-do list each day. I haven't found some perfect workflow that allows me to optimize my day better than the next person. But what I do choose to do, I'm disciplined about it. One of my favorite quotes says that only the disciplined are free, because the ill-disciplined are slaves to their moods and their passions. Because just doing it, even when you don't feel like it, is true discipline. But the problem is, discipline takes time, and it takes practice. So this is how we all fall into this rut of thinking that we're just unproductive or lazy. We think we don't have discipline, but the truth is nobody is born with self-discipline. It's not just you. Self-discipline is a learned behavior that requires practice to get better. And that's good news, because it means you have control over it. I have found that about 90% of the time, our roadblocks to self-discipline isn't that you are lazy, isn't that you are just a big procrastinator, it isn't that you are so unproductive, it's just trouble with task initiation. Have you ever heard that term before, task initiation? It's a fundamental executive functioning skill, and it's most easily defined as the ability to begin a project in a timely manner. But one of the things I find so interesting about task initiation is that many people struggle with it, and while many people struggle with that first step to get started on a project, typically, once they do start, they keep going. So even if 90% of people struggle with task initiation, that same 90% is not going to have trouble once they actually start. It's not the actual task that they don't have momentum to complete. It's simply the act of starting the task. I like to imagine a task as a boulder on the top of a hill. In order to get a boulder rolling down a hill, it takes a pretty good deal of energy, right? At the start, you have to be able to push the boulder to get it started going down the hill. But once it's going, it doesn't really require all that much effort. Task initiation is basically the same thing. Most of us need the most energy to get the task started, but then once we've begun, we have the energy and the momentum to continue. So once again, we come back to our initial thought of, oh, well, I'm just so unproductive, but more likely it's not that you're not productive, it's just that you're lacking good task initiation, and that's where self-discipline comes in. Because in order to get any ball rolling, you need self-discipline. And so the answer to being more productive isn't actually just to be more productive. It's not necessarily about doing the most, but it's more about learning some skills and self-discipline to overcome task initiation. And I have two of my best tips for how to do that. Number one is to pick small wins. I talk a lot in my videos about how a body in motion stays in motion and a body at rest stays at rest. If you are sitting down on your sofa relaxing, it is going to be a lot harder to will yourself to stand up and go do something than if you had chose to maybe just do it right when you walked in the door from work. Say for example, you have a home project that you want to do and you keep putting it off. I don't know, like you have some pictures you want to hang up on the wall. You are far more likely to do it when you first get home from work than you are if you decide that you're just going to sit down and relax for 20 minutes. because when you get home from work, you are already up, you're already moving, your body's in motion. You have to exert a lot less energy to get you to push into the task of hanging up those frames than if you had to convince yourself to stand up from a comfy, cozy sofa where you're scrolling your phone. Now, if your body already isn't in motion, you do need to put it in motion, and that's why I like small wins. Stand up and take your glass to the sink. Put the trash that's on the counter in the trash can. Take your shoes and put them away by the back door. Small wins are easy to convince yourself to do, and they then thus get your body up and moving, where it becomes a lot easier to push that momentum into other tasks. It's all about these small wins. And you might be like, okay, great, like I put my glass in the sink, what's the help there? But small wins are really beneficial beyond just completing that single task. They're really beneficial to your long-term ability to stick with goals. Every time you complete a task, even a really tiny small task, you help avoid cognitive dissonance, which is essentially the term for when you have two or more modes of thought that contradict each other. A really simple way to explain this is like every night when you say you're gonna wake up early tomorrow morning to work out, and then every morning you just hit the snooze button instead. Every time you don't follow through on a task you said you were going to complete, it's like breaking a little promise to yourself. And not only does that mean you are not completing the task, but it typically is taking up this excess cognitive bandwidth that you could be using to complete the task. So instead of just making big goals and setting big tasks that you are maybe more likely to skip, plunging you into that downward spiral, pick small wins, small yeses that allow you to build yourself up, giving you the belief and momentum to do bigger things. You want to set yourself up for success. When you are successful at many small things, it gives you the resources to then be successful at bigger things. And my second tip is to pick one thing. A great way to become more self-disciplined isn't to rework your entire day and create multiple things that you need to be self-disciplined about. Just like we were talking about earlier, you're more likely to skip one, and skipping even just one will impact your momentum, give you that struggle of what you said you were gonna do versus what you actually did, and so on. So again, you wanna set yourself up for success. Pick one thing you wanna create self-discipline about. And if it's big, choose one task inside of that you can do in 10 minutes or less. And then do it every single day. It is one task for less than 10 minutes every day. And when you hit a day that you don't want to do it, you do it anyways. A recent study found that it took on average 66 days to develop a habit, so don't give in to the temptation of giving up on day 28, and eventually you will find that you have developed self-discipline for this task, and that self-discipline is going to ripple into other aspects of your life. Just like how small wins do this, doing a small win gives you momentum to then do bigger tasks. Developing self-discipline for one single small task that's less than 10 minutes in a day is going to give you the skills necessary to develop self-discipline for other things. And so coming full circle and going back to my original thought of, have you ever gotten to the end of the day and felt like you didn't get enough done? I hope now that you're able to reframe that thought process a little bit. It doesn't need to be about doing more or getting the most done or being the most productive. It's about creating self-discipline around the few tasks that really matter by constantly looking for small wins to keep the momentum. And at the end of the day, like I always say, our successes are rarely the outcomes of big, momentous events, but they're usually the outcome of many small tasks that we commit to repeat every single day. As Will Durant once wrote, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit." At the end of the day, your success comes down to what you commit to and agree to do every single day. Fun fact of the day, so the quote, "We are what we repeatedly do, excellence then is not an act but a habit," has been used for many, many years, and most people quote it as Aristotle. I think that I probably have in the past as well, but I recently learned a fun fact that Aristotle never actually wrote it. He did create the idea, but his words were, "Our virtues are formed in a man by his doing the actions." And it was then the writer Will Durant who interpreted it as, "We are what we repeatedly do, therefore excellence is not an act but a habit." So that's your fun fact of the day. Thank you so much for stopping by and watching. I hope you're having a fantastic day. Remember to be kind to yourself and others, and I'll see you in my next video.